Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is a commencement fire and life safety announcement. May I have your attention, please? In accordance with New York City Fire Code, exit doors are located throughout the event arena. Please take a moment to look for the nearest exit sign next to your seating location. In the event of a fire or emergency, please listen for further instructions from university officials and/or the podium. Thank you.
Please remain standing as University Chaplain Janelle Davis leads us in the invocation.
Congratulations, new PhDs. Congratulations, new physicians. You have reached for your dreams. You have worked hard to achieve your goals to become physicians and medical researchers. We are grateful for all of the support and encouragement your families and your friends, sometimes entire communities, have provided you during this long academic journey. We give thanks for the quality of medical care and the groundbreaking bench research and clinical research that you have done that pushes the boundaries of medical knowledge. We are sure that you will do great work in patient and community care and in public health. We know that you are prepared to be the changing hands, faces, minds, and hearts of medicine. We are confident that you will communicate honest information to your patients and their families. You will offer to all of us your skills, your integrity, your intuition, your diligence, your best judgments, and your humility. Continue to respect the dignity of your patients. Be humbled by the high esteem that your patients, their families, and communities will assign to you. Hold sacred your commitment to lifelong learning. Be wise and humane. Be just and generous. Be compassionate. May it be so. May it be so.
I want to welcome everyone. You can sit down now. And extend a welcome also to the family and friends who are here today. Yesterday, at Class Day, we celebrated individual achievements in the class. Today, we come together to celebrate collectively your doctoral degrees, MD and PhD. As proud as I am to lead this ceremony, it's clear that there are people here who are even prouder than I am. So I'm going to ask each of the graduates to stand up. They're minimally compliant, as you can see. Turn around, find your family and friends in the crowd, and thank them with your applause. Please be seated again. So this is the time in the graduation where I typically describe the history of medicine. 3,000 years, 3 hours or less. So I'm going to try to do it very quickly and hit some of the high points. Later on in this ceremony, but also earlier downtown, the class was administered, and again will be administered, the Hippocratic Oath. What most people don't realize until they actually read the thing is it never says what most people think it says. It never actually says, do no harm. But that's what most people sort of think the Hippocratic Oath was all about. What's actually good, I guess, in retrospect, the Hippocratic Oath never said, do no harm, because if that were truly what it said, doctors would have been violating that principle repeatedly up until no less or no more than about 100 to 150 years ago. For most of the history of medicine, doctors were hopefully compassionate, caring, and available, but they didn't really have the faintest idea what they were doing. One need go back no further than a little over 100 years ago to see that two of the mainstays of therapy were bloodletting and purging. I edit the longest continuously published textbook of medicine in the world, and I'm proud to say that the first edition, published in 1927, was, as best as I can tell, the first medical textbook ever not to recommend bloodletting and purging. Some of you have learned from people called hospitalists, doctors who spend most of their time in the hospital, who are expert, we believe, in caring for hospitalized patients. And I was involved in the beginning of that movement. And when we first started it, people wanted to call the movement hospitalism. Made good sense, hospitalists, hospitalism. Well, hospitalists, we believe, was actually a new term, but hospitalism was not. Hospitalism had been around for centuries. It was the term that described all the awful things that happened to people when they came into a hospital. Hospitals, very simply, were places for poor people to die. If you couldn't afford to die at home, you went to a hospital to die. There was nothing done in a hospital that really could make you better. And in fact, since you were likely to share a bed with one or more people who were also sick, the hospital probably made you worse. This all began to change mid to late 19th century in Germany with the development of what at the time was called, and my German isn't very good, so you'll forgive my pronunciation, Inneren Medizin, or scientific medicine. Even today, internal medicine is named after that. And this was the beginning of trying to understand what actually caused the symptoms that people complained about. Up until that time, doctors saw people with signs of disease or symptoms and made up stuff that might help. One of the best examples I like to give is a description of disease through the middle or the end of the 19th century called the dropsy. Now, I don't think we had that in the curriculum anymore, but the dropsy was nothing more than badly swollen ankles. And the dropsy could be caused by lots of things. As our students well know, they could give us the differential diagnosis just like that. And the only treatment that we don't anymore use, we used at least into my lifetime for the dropsy, was the leaf of a flowering plant with a purple flower called digitalis. And if your dropsy was caused by a rapid heart rhythm called atrial fibrillation, and you somehow luckily chewed on just enough of that leaf, it could magically slow down your heart rate and your ankle swelling would go away. But if you chewed on too much or too little, or if your ankle swelling was caused by all the other things that can cause your ankle swelling, chewing in the digitalis leaf simply killed you. But since dropsy was fatal anyway, who could tell a difference? That was the state of medicine. But it's changed remarkably before my career, during my career, and certainly during your careers. Starting really after World War II, hospital insurance meant that people could go to the hospital even if they could afford to be sick at home. And increasingly, hospitals became places that could actually do things and make you better. The rise of the National Institutes of Health and biomedical research led to extraordinary discoveries in what actually causes the signs and symptoms by understanding the underlying mechanisms of disease. And as part of that, and we'll talk more about this later, various medications and therapies could be developed that actually treated what was wrong with you rather than just what you may have been complaining about. Along the way, we learned a lot more about what causes disease. We learned that smoking, high blood pressure, diabetes, and cholesterol, for example, cause heart disease. We learned how to do randomized trials, where half the patients would get one thing and half would get the other, and we could actually figure out what worked and what didn't, rather than simply chewing a digitalis leaf and seeing who died. And as a result, we've seen in the US and across the world remarkable improvements in life expectancy, reductions in disease, improvements in health and quality of life. But if it were a done deal, we wouldn't need all of you. We could just declare victory and close the medical school. Obviously, we're not there. And we're not there in pretty much every direction I described. There's more to be learned about what causes disease, what we can do about it at a fundamental level. There's more to be learned about how to prevent disease before it occurs. There's more to be learned about how to take better care of patients humanely, recognizing what we can do and what we can't do, and preserving the custom of caring and compassion that our forebears had when they couldn't do anything useful, and that we have to be sure that we preserve now that we have lots of useful things we can do. This is the charge that I'm giving to this class, that in all these dimensions, you will collectively make things better, regardless of where you practice, regardless of what kind of research you do. As physicians and as people who care about the health of one person at a time, the health, as I said this morning, of whole populations at a time. We know you're up to it. Your family and friends know you're up to it. And I, for one, look forward to watching with great pride as you individually and collectively make health and medicine better during your careers. Thank you. The next part of our program will be a series of awards. Now, I know that everyone here is waiting to see their son, daughter, friend get a degree. Think of us just as the warm-up act. We will get there. We are delighted today to have a number of faculty awards. I'm going to ask Dr. Kenneth Ford, PNS class of 1959, and a member of our Columbia Board of Trustees to join me here. Distinguished Service Awards are the highest awards we give to recognize individuals' contributions of time and effort to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. They bring great distinction to the institution, to our alumni, and to the profession itself. Today's two honorees are Dr. Andrew Witt and Dr. Linda Lewis. Dr. Witt, who is unable to be with us today, is a professor emeritus in pharmacology, received his PhD from Columbia, joined our faculty in 1971, and has been named Teacher of the Year 7 times. Also received Columbia's Presidential Award for Outstanding Teaching, and he led one of the world's leading research teams focused on abnormalities of heart rhythm and ways to terminate those abnormal rhythms. I'm sorry Dr. Witt can't be with us here today, but hopefully you can hear the applause we're going to give to him. Our second honoree is Dr. Linda Lewis. Dr. Lewis is Clinical Professor Emeritus and still active in our Department of Neurology. She graduated from Bethany College, received her MD degree from West Virginia University, left those hills for the hills of Washington Heights in 1969 when she came to Columbia as a neurology resident. She became chief resident and ultimately a professor of neurology. In 1979, she became dean of student affairs and excelled in that role for 26 years. Do you imagine how much she knows about so many people? She's an outstanding teacher, a truly master clinician, recognized as one of America's top physicians in every list you can find. Practitioner of the Year here at Columbia, a top doc, a gold doc, a super doc, and she still continues to teach and to serve as an attending physician in neurology. Dr. Lewis, we're so proud to give you this special award.
Thank you.
We're going to take our picture.
Oh, good.
Next are the Charles W. Baumfalk Awards, established through the generosity of John Frederick and Alice Baumfalk in memory of a graduate of the class of 1884. This year's Baumfalk Award for Preclinical Teaching goes to Dr. Penelope Boyden. I've never heard you call her Penelope before, but everyone calls Penny a professor of pharmacology and a leading researcher in cardiovascular biology and pharmacology. But today we're honoring her for her devotion to teaching medical students here for the past 35 years. She especially excels in small group teaching, where she vividly demonstrates pharmacologic principles to supplement the lectures. Since the curricular change in 2009, she's actively developed a new pharmacology course, which she runs herself. In recognition of more than 35 years of teaching students, of being an exemplary individual here at Columbia, and really the epitome of our devotion to teaching, Dr. Boyden, it's my privilege to give you the Baumfalk Award for Distinguished Teaching.
Thank you so much. I'm shy here. Thank you.
The next Baumfalk Award for Distinguished Teaching goes to Dr. Deborah Jones. Dr. Jones is Assistant Professor of Medicine and Director of our Primary Care Clerkship. She began working as the director to develop an improved clerkship exam, improve student feedback, and improve training continuity across all sites. Working with others, she developed a workshop for educators on giving effective feedback, and she successfully increased the number of primary care clerkship sites, as well as improving and standardizing the student evaluation process. The P&S is known for its intensive research component. We also take great pride in primary care and in being there for our patients, both locally and nationally. And Dr. Jones epitomizes those skills. Her innovation, her leadership, and her dedication have earned her other teaching awards, as also an UWIG Clinical Scholar Award. And so I'm very pleased to honor Dr. Deborah Jones with the Baumfalk Award for Distinguished Teaching. Next is the Leonard Tao Humanism in Medicine Award. This award began with a donation from the Arnold P. Gold Foundation. We talked about that a bit yesterday at Class Day. The foundation has promoted humanism in medicine. It's the foundation that began the white coat ceremony, which all of you and your family members, I'm sure, remember from the beginning of medical school. They named the Humanism Award after Leonard Tao, a good friend and a really remarkable man whose great compassion and respect for others epitomizes humanitarianism in general, and hopefully our school epitomizes the extrapolation of that to patient care. This year's winner is Dr. Emily DeMango. Dr. Mango is the Associate Professor of Medicine. She directs both the John Edsel John Wood Asthma Center and the Gunnar Esiason Adult Cystic Fibrosis and Lung Center. As director of the Asthma Center, she's worked tirelessly to address the needs of the Washington Heights community, where asthma is endemic. And her adult cystic fibrosis program has become a national model for the compassionate care of patients as they make the transition from childhood to adulthood in a disease that used to be uniformly fatal by adolescence, but now, with clinicians such as Dr. DeMango, people can live far longer and healthier. Dr. DeMango is also a popular teacher, an excellent role model, and she serves as one of our advisory deans. She exceeds, in our opinion, any standards that one could imagine for the Leonard Tal Humanism in Medicine Award from the Arnold P. Gold Foundation, and we're so pleased to recognize her here today. Congratulations. Next is the Stevens Triennial Prize, awarded to an individual whose original research on any medical subject is deemed to be most meritorious. This prize wasn't established until 1891 by Alexander Hodgson Stevens, a former president of the College of Physicians and Surgeons. And already joining me here is today's recipient, Dr. Carol Mason. A professor of pathology and cell biology, neuroscience, and ophthalmic science. Her research focuses on cell-to-cell interactions in the developing brain, and she's a leader in the study of the development of the visual system. Her work's been recognized by election to the Institute of Medicine, to the National Academy of Sciences, and as president of the Society for Neuroscience. In addition to being a superb scientist, she's also an active member of all those departments I mentioned, and is leading this graduate program in neuroscience for us. Dr. Mason really is a wonderful example of someone who can balance both the research and the teaching, a cornerstone of what we do here at Columbia. And it's really my privilege to award her the Stevens Prize. Next, the Harold and Golden Lamprey Research Awards. These awards began in 1983 to honor outstanding young scientists in both the basic and clinical sciences. This year's award in basic sciences goes to Dr. Randy Bruno, who unfortunately will not be here to accept the award today. His research focuses on how sensory information is processed by higher brain regions and determines what we actually see from all those things that are out there that we sometimes ignore. His early work has also already placed him at the forefront of neuroscience, and it's our privilege to honor him with the Harold and Golden Lamport Award in Basic Sciences. Let's clap for him as well, if we may. And here to receive in person the Harold Golden Lamport Research Award in Clinical Sciences is Dr. Kristen Schultz. There he is. Dr. Schultz is currently a Florence Irving Assistant Professor of Medicine and Director of Research in the Center for Advanced Cardiac Care in the Department of Medicine. His research focuses on patients with heart failure, specifically the molecular mechanisms that underlie and cause heart failure. He's also a terrific mentor for students and residents, and he's been prolific even at this early stage of his career, as recognized by a number of awards, including our own Katz Prize. He's also a real doctor, recognized as a top doctor, a top cardiologist, and one of New York's best cardiologists. It's our privilege, Dr. Schultz, to present you with the Dr. Harold and Golden Lamport Research Award in Clinical Sciences. Next will be the presentation of the Distinguished Teacher Award from the class of 2013. And I'm pleased to introduce Sue Gu, who officially is now Dr. Sue Gu, because the degrees were conferred downtown, even if they haven't been handed out yet.
The class of 2013 is tremendously grateful to all of the faculty members that have taught us, whether in lectures during the preclinical years or on the wards in the years after. Dr. Devlin, a man who we all know wears many hats, has taught us through all of our years at PNS, always bringing us back to our foundations and guiding us to become the compassionate, caring physicians that our patients deserve. I am honored to present the Distinguished Teacher Award on behalf of the class of 2013 to Dr. Michael Devlin.
Next will be the graduation speaker. Always a special event, but I'm going to argue yet even more special today. As you know from our program, the speaker is Dr. Robert J. Lefkowitz, who's the James B. Duke Professor of Medicine and Biochemistry at Duke University and investigator of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. But certainly more pertinent today, even the many other accomplishments which we'll talk about, is that he's a graduate of both Columbia College in 1962 and the College of Physicians and Surgeons in 1966. Dr. Lefkowitz's work, for which he just received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, focuses on what are called G-coupled receptors, the most common receptors in cells. Now, when I say G-coupled receptors, the first thing people ask is, like, what happened to A, B, C, D, E, and F coupled receptors? And I actually don't know what happened to them, but maybe you can tell us later. This year, Bob shared the Nobel Prize with Dr. Brian Kolbilka of Stanford, a scientist he mentored in his lab, with whom he continues to collaborate. Now, I have to say that we're really delighted to have Bob here today, but as you may know, he's only the second person in his PNS class to win the Nobel Prize. But as he reminded me earlier today, he finished ahead of that other person in the graduating class. Bob's research has really changed the way we think about medicine. For a long time, no one really knew how natural substances, let alone medications, worked inside the cell. And what he showed was a series of proteins help send that signal from the surface of the cell to the correct place in the cell, so that whether it's your natural hormones or medications, they get to the right place and do the right things. Today, probably more than half of all medications rely on some sort of G-coupled protein and its receptor. A couple of quick examples. If you have or know anyone who has asthma, we talked before about asthma in Washington Heights, the most common medication used for that is an inhaler, which relies on the beta receptor, which is a G-coupled receptor. If you take a beta blocker for your blood pressure, that receptor is working, or actually being blocked by the medication. So what Bob has done has fundamentally changed our knowledge of one of the most important pathways in the human body. After doing his medical school training at PNS, Bob stayed at Columbia as an intern and resident in medicine, went to the NIH for several years, where he began his research career, went to the Massachusetts General Hospital as a cardiology fellow, and has spent pretty much his entire career ever since at Duke University. In fact, there's an interesting story that he went from being a fellow to an associate professor with tenure. I don't know quite how you do that, but it just shows you the kind of person he is. He's a member of the National Academy of Sciences, the Institute of Medicine, as I said, the winner of the Nobel Prize. We were talking earlier today, and Bob and I have known each other for a number of years, and he said something that I think will resonate with everybody here in the audience. That when he sat, not quite in the same chair, but in an analogous chair at his medical school graduation, his father told him it was the proudest moment of his life. We're delighted to have Bob back to be the graduation speaker. It may not be the proudest moment of your life, but the proudest moment of many of our lives. Bob, it's wonderful to have you back at your alma mater.
Thank you, Lee. Distinguished faculty, medical graduates, and guests, I'd like to offer my heartfelt congratulations to all of those who will shortly be receiving your MD and/or PhD degrees. I am honored to have been invited to address you this afternoon, but please understand that I have absolutely no illusions about my role. Not too long ago, I read that 10 years after graduation, virtually no one remembers who spoke at their commencement. I know I certainly don't. So at this point, I assume that you are reasonably wondering why I'm up here and whether I've got anything worthwhile to say to you. Let me hasten to assure you, I'm wondering about this too. As to why I'm up here, I imagine it's largely because I've won the Nobel Prize this past year. What I have learned during these first 6 months or so as a Nobel laureate is that this award apparently entitles me to pontificate on virtually any subject, at any time, regardless of whether I know anything at all about it. Moreover, I've learned that most people will take what I have to say more seriously than is justified by the content of my remarks. With that caveat, I have indeed been racking my brain these past few weeks, trying to tease out at least a few pearls of wisdom to bestow upon you. Presumably, there should be some elements discernible in my career that might serve as guideposts for you, things worth emulating, or things that I might have learned along the way that are worth imparting to you. What, I have repeatedly asked myself, have I learned in the almost 50 years since I sat, much as you do today, at my own graduation from this fine institution in 1966 that might be worth talking to you about? I realized, of course, that such life lessons are not something one ordinarily thinks much about. One's just too busy living them. I'm reminded of something that my favorite philosopher, the former New York Yankees catcher Yogi Berra, once said. He was asked what he thought about when he was trying to get a hit in a clutch situation. Think, he replied? How the heck are you going to think and hit at the same time? So I've been thinking about it lately, and what I decided I want to talk to you about is something that I just don't hear much about these days: the importance and power of experiencing your life's work as a calling. Now, the dictionary defines a calling as a strong impulse or inclination, a summons to some particular mission, usually one of some social value. But let me amplify on that in terms of my own experience. I've been remarkably fortunate to have felt a calling to 2 careers in medicine, first as a physician and later as a scientist. The notion of a calling is often intertwined with important role models. Almost all successful individuals can readily identify several crucial figures that they encountered early in life or early in their careers, who modeled a way of doing things that had immediate and compelling appeal. As a youngster, growing up in the Bronx, I had at least 4 heroes or role models: the Yankee slugger, Mickey Mantle, the humorist Woody Allen, the author of the James Bond novels, Ian Fleming, and my family physician, who actually made house calls. In the end, it was the latter role model that ultimately captured my attention and my fancy. From about the third grade on, I never had any doubt that I was destined to be a physician, just like him. I loved reading books about doctors, especially novels in which an MD played a central, usually heroic role. Throughout high school and college, I actively looked forward to entering medical school. To me, becoming a member of the medical profession was something very special, perhaps somewhat akin to entering the clergy, in that one was privy to very special knowledge and also bore unique responsibilities. I thoroughly enjoyed my 4 years here at P&S, then 2 more as a house officer right here at Presbyterian Hospital, then as a cardiology fellow at the Massachusetts General Hospital, and as a young professor of medicine at Duke, where I attended cardiology clinic and, until 10 years ago, still made general medical rounds. These were experiences that I will always treasure. They felt perfectly right for me, an expression of my most deeply felt aspirations and the most natural and productive outlet for my own particular abilities and talents. In other words, I experienced the practice of medicine as a calling. But then along the way, something happened. During the early years of my training, I had never really considered that I might become a scientist. But a 2-year experience at the NIH, in fulfillment of my draft obligation in the late 1960s, began to change all that. After a very slow start, during which time I displayed absolutely no talent whatsoever at the bench, I began to finally show some promise. But it would take another 5 to 7 years before it would become clear to me that my primary mission, the focus of my life's work, would lie in the laboratory rather than at the bedside. How did I ultimately come to realize that perhaps my truest calling was in scientific research? These are not things one figures out with one's head, but rather with one's heart. For example, I realized that, more and more, my thoughts and daydreams at odd times, such as on the drive home from work, were on my experiments, rather than on the interesting patients I had seen in the clinic. Let me hasten to add that I am by no means implying that I believe there is any inherent inconsistency in a career which combines both medical research and practice. Only that for me, this was not the way. That said, I can tell you that despite my singular focus on fundamental research for a good many years now, a clinical and physiological perspective informs and guides my research to this very day. So why do I think the experience of a calling is so important? And how do you know if you're launched on your true path? The first point is that I don't believe that for any individual there is necessarily only one possible best choice. As I mentioned, in my own case, I have felt a calling to at least 2 careers, and I have known many colleagues who have continuously and successfully reinvented themselves in a variety of roles. Of course, one of the wonderful things about a career in medicine and the other health professions on which all of you now embark is that the journey has so many possible itineraries and so many possible destinations. I would hope that none of you will ever feel hemmed in or confined by choices you have made early on. Sometimes these can last a lifetime, but sometimes another aspect of yourselves may play a more prominent role later on. So try to be open to such evolution. So how do you know if you're responding to a true calling, one that is really right for you? I think that there are various diagnostic tests that you may use. Do you feel a passionate engagement in what you're doing? Does it intensely focus your concentration? Do you experience a sense of timelessness when engaged in your work, such that the hours just seem to fly by? Does your work feel, in a sense, like play? Hopefully, in the years ahead, you'll be able to answer an emphatic yes to at least most of these questions. I think that there are several important elements in this notion of a calling. The first is the simple power of belief in what you're doing and of its importance. This will empower you to achieve perhaps more than you had ever imagined possible. The second is the conviction that you were really meant to do this, and that the work fully engages the best of your own innate talents and abilities. In this context, President John F. Kennedy, in a paraphrase of Aristotle, said the following, quote, "The ancient Greek definition of happiness is the full use of your powers along lines of excellence." Just think about that for a minute. The full use of your powers along lines of excellence. This same ideal is found in the Hippocratic Oath, which you will take in just a few minutes. It says, quote, "That into whatsoever home I shall enter, it shall be for the good of the sick and the well, to the utmost of my power." A corollary of this is that you're truly following your own path, listening to the stirrings of your own heart, not doing something that you feel someone else wants you to do. And finally, the third, which flows naturally from the other two, is a sense of enthusiasm for and optimism about what you do. These latter elements are quite infectious. If you follow an academic path, as I have, they will assure that you will be an attractive role model for younger colleagues that come to learn from you. If you're a full-time clinician, they will certainly be much appreciated by your patients. If you're able to tap into this notion of a calling, you'll be fortunate indeed, for it holds the key to a career characterized by fulfillment, contentment, and a sense of accomplishment. The simple secret is you just have to believe in it. But of course, there's more to life than work, as you all know. Maintaining a sense of balance between a busy and committed medical career on the one hand, and family life on the other, can provide a real challenge. But such a balance is crucial if you are to lead a full life. My fondest wish for all of you is that in the years ahead, you will feel, as I have throughout my career, that two of your favorite times of the day are when you leave for work in the morning, anticipating the adventures and challenges that lie ahead, and when you return home in the evening, anticipating your time with your family and leisure pursuits. Now, as I conclude these remarks, I hope that you will not judge them too harshly, but rather will measure them against the yardstick provided by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who is reputed to have said that there are only three important rules for public speaking: be sincere, be brief, and be seated. My heartiest congratulations to you all. Thank you.
Well, Bob, thank you so much. And you can see how his career really represents what's so special about the College of Physicians and Surgeons. The education as a physician, the curiosity to drive a research career, the appreciation for his colleagues and friends here at PNS, and the passion for making a positive impact on other people's lives. Something we all can learn from. I now call on Dr. Arthur Palmer, Associate Dean for Graduate Affairs, to award the PhD degrees to the PhD graduates.
The College of Physicians and Surgeons student community includes over 350 PhD and MD PhD candidates within the coordinated biomedical doctoral programs. These young scientists work in laboratories in the Medical Center and Morningside campuses and contribute importantly to the scientific and therapeutic advances of Columbia's research enterprise. A total of 66 students earned their PhD in the past year. All of these graduating doctoral students have made significant scientific discoveries during the course of their thesis research. The directors of graduate studies of the departments and programs nominate the most outstanding of these students for special recognition. Selecting the best from amongst this group is a challenge. I am reminded that our students are remarkable and their accomplishments are astonishing. I thank the distinguished faculty committee that helped me in this difficult task. The recipient of the Dean's Award for Excellence in Research for 2013 is Christine Constantinople. I invite her to join me on the podium. Don't go anywhere. Dr. Constantinople performed her doctoral research in the laboratory of Assistant Professor Randy Bruno of the Department of Neuroscience, one of today's Lamport Award recipients. Dr. Constantinople's research illuminated two fundamental aspects of the mammalian brain, using the rat as a model organism. In the first project, she investigated the distinction between the awake and the sleeping brain. This research becomes increasingly important to the audience the longer that I talk. Her results show that cortical networks oscillate between activity and silence during sleep, and that noradrenaline is the key neuromodulator suppressing the silent state during wakefulness. In the second project, she investigated the flow of information through the layers of the cerebral cortex. Her results suggest a new compartmentalization of these layers in processing sensory input and modifies the standard model of the cortex that has been developed over the past 60 years. Her work exemplifies what graduate students at PNS do: advance their fields beyond conventional hypotheses with brilliant insights and stellar experimental and theoretical work. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Christine Constantinople. Congratulations. Yes. Due to the nature of scientific research, PhD thesis defenses take place throughout the year, after which these newly minted scientists move on to exciting opportunities around the world. As a result, only some of this year's graduates are with us today. I now ask Dean Goldman and Assistant Dean Lowoff to join me in presenting the doctorates.
I ask the candidates for the PhD to please stand. As I call your name, please approach the dais from your right. Christine Constantinople, Neurobiology and Behavior. Neil Allen Gray, Neurobiology and Behavior. Eileen Marie Guilfoyle, Cellular, Molecular, and Biomedical Studies. Cindy Marie Hodakowski, Cellular, Molecular, and Biomedical Studies. Sharnaz Kamal, Cellular, Molecular, and Biomedical Studies. Matthew Lekak, Pharmacology and Molecular Signaling. Regina Anna Lutz, Cellular, Molecular, and Biomedical Studies. Jose Ricardo McPhailin Figueroa, Cellular, Molecular, and Biomedical Studies. Derek Hayden Oakley, Neurobiology and Behavior. Mayra Pires, Biochemistry and Molecular Biophysics. Rika Raj Shrestha, Neurobiology and Behavior. Congratulations to all of our PhD recipients.
Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Lisa Melman, Senior Associate Dean for Student Affairs, who will present the MD diplomas.
It's a tremendous pleasure to welcome you. This is a class of adventuresome, collaborative, and caring students, a particularly mature class willing to partner with us for the new curriculum. These are students who truly make a difference in the lives of others. While attending to their studies in the fast-paced curriculum, they also launched the Columbia Medical Review student-run journal. They initiated new clubs for improv comedy, innovative medicine, basketball, nutrition and health. They revitalized one for immersion in Dominican culture, and they helped start a CUMC-wide Queer Ally Partnership. Many conducted research, some got a second degree. Like the eldest sibling paving new ground in a family, this talented class not only collaborated well with one another, but they partnered with faculty, administration, and their junior classmates to share their experiences so we could continue to make improvements in the new curriculum and in student support for their peers in rising classes. Their maturity and flexibility through these changes set them apart, and they stand as models of professionalism. And while they participated in countless extracurricular activities, they also earned the highest board scores of any class to date. The class of 2013 has awed us with their intelligence, energy, flexibility, and compassion, and we are all richer because of them. And lastly, this class matched extremely well into top residency programs across the country, where we know that they will continue to make a difference. We send you, the class of 2013, your families and significant others, a hearty congratulations. But let me tell you a little bit more. There are 162 graduates in the class, 48% women, and thus 52% men. In terms of dual degrees, 9 MD PhDs, 5 MD MPH, Master of Public Health, 3 MD MBA, and 2 in our oral maxillofacial surgery MD DDS program. An additional 32 students did an extra research year, resulting in 31% of the class who took extra time for research or dual degree. 22% went abroad for senior electives or scholarly project, mostly to developing countries. 22% matched at Columbia for part or all of their postgraduate training, and 38% will remain in New York State, mostly in New York City, and the others are really spread across the entire country. Now, lest you think that these students only study, 3 babies were born during medical school, 15 students got married or had commitment ceremonies. There were 70 marathons, triathlons, and Ironman events completed by our students, not including the epic feat that we call medical school. So graduates, in the envelope you received today, in addition to your diploma, you will find a copy of your MSPE, your Dean's Letter. Please rise when your roll will be called and proceed to the ramp to my left. When your name is called, come up to receive your diploma from Dr. Goldman, then walk down the ramp on my right and return to your seat, on both ends, stopping briefly for your photo. First row. Sarah J. Adams. Taiwo A. Adara-Bigby. Aliza S. Alter. Olawale O. Amubiea. Anthony A. Anagnostu. Nestor Anguiano. Mark A. Atia. Connie Bay. Anna M. Bank. Eric M. Bank. David Behar. Catherine Miley Borthwick. William R. Boyson. Alex K. Bratt. Deirdre A. Brazil. Barry E. Bro. Jonathan Brent. Nisha M. Broody. Emily C. Brune. Ezra A. Birch. John A. Buza. John Michael E. Caldwell. Kevin M. Carey. Hernyung Susie Chang. Floria W. Chi. Ka Wing Cho. Caitlin B. Clancy. Ryan M. Coyle. Lily A. Dash. Shane C. Dickerson. Christopher S. DeJesu. Marianne N. DiNapoli, Samantha C. Doe, Yo-Yo Duanmu, Victoria A. Abiana, Peter M. Einerson, Andrew M. Eisenthal, Julie I. Indrizzi, Clara B. Engman, Rebecca D. Eskin, Jessica A. Fleitman, Stefan K. Flores, Whitney D. Florin, William A. Friedpastor, Claire I. French, Ermina A. Gavlas, Elizabeth A. Godby, Hannah E. Goldstein, William J. Grantham, Neil Gray, Nicole F. Green, Hillary M. Grubb, Sue Gu, Jonathan D. Hansen, Khalid I.A. Hassan, Narissa A. Haynes, Grant A. Henderson, Christina L. Herrera, Alexander M. Hinker, Dara D. Holder, Anne A. Holland, Lindsay K. Hussey Anderson, Jordan E. Ireton, Maher Jandali, Skylar H. Johnson, Gregory L. Judson, Sunil D. Kamath, Colleen E. Kays, Catherine A. Keegan, Sean P. Kelly, Catherine E. Kerr, Naima Khan, John A. Kluft, Britton C. Kreiner, Jacob M. Kriegel, Matthew W. Crone, Brandon C. Lane, John W. Ladding, Joseph P. Lazar, Kristen J. Lennon, Quinn T.C. Leslie, Janet Y. Lee, Peter Liu, Gideon Liu, Douglas Kurt McDonald, Clement D. Marshall, Camilla M. Mateo, Lauren A. Mountner, Darren J. McCullough, Thomas H. McConville, Jose Ricardo McFarland Figueroa, Benjamin A. McVeigh, Molly C. Meadows, Erica J. Mejia, Avery C. Miller, Carrie M. Menarchik, Mutaz Musa, Matthew D. Wynn, Eva X. Nong, Kristen A. M. North, Derek Oakley, Ann C. Onishi, Colin J. Orr, Lauren E. Orr, Anurag S. Parikh, Ashley M. Pritchard, Rohini Rao, Margaret R. Ray, Brett A. Riebel, Jose Ricky Regalbuto, Anna E. Reinhardt, Matthew Riedel, Robert S. Rogers, Christian C. Rose, Lauren D. Rosenberg, Catherine A. Rosenwasser, Lisa Rothman, Daniel Rubin, Benjamin Rubenstein, Sachi Sachdev, Stacy M. Schofield. John Paul Sheehy. Jamal N. Shillingford. Syra Siddiqui. Steve A. Situ. Derek B. Smith. Paul J. Smith. Robert C. Spang III. Kimberly A. Stanford. Ruth W. Stefanos. Scott M. Stevenson. Travis R. Stradford. Paul Poyisu. Simon Sung. Kelly A. Swaim. Eric Tang. Jesse M. Thone. Daniel G. Tobert. Kylie E. Trott. Peggy Sang. Jacob E. Tulipan. Stephanie C. Tung. Blair W. Uniac. Jordan N. Van Laer. Carrie A. Vaughn. Sarah R. Viola. Daniel A. Walker. Justin T. Ward. Nicole A. Whites. Forrest N. White. Richard H. White. Christian C. Wilson. Meredith C. Winter. Teresa J. Wojtaszewicz. Virginia K. Workman. And Rachel L. Wormser. Graduates, please stand as I lead you in reciting the Hippocratic Oath found on the inside cover of your program. In our profession, it is a custom established more than 2,000 years ago that no one may be admitted to its honors who has not first expressly undertaken its obligations. Now, therefore, I call upon you to take, as we have taken before you, the oath which bears the name of Hippocrates. The language in which our predecessors first pronounced it is no longer spoken. The very gods whom they called to witness have been discarded, but still we can find no nobler words than the most ancient in which to hand down the traditions of our calling. Please join with me. I do solemnly swear, by whatever each of us holds most sacred, that I will be loyal to the profession of medicine and just and generous to its members, that I will lead my life and practice my art in uprightness and honor, that into whatsoever house I shall enter, it shall be for the good of the sick to the utmost of my power, my holding myself far aloof from wrong, from corruption, from the tempting of others to vice, that I will exercise my art solely for the cure of my patients and will give no drug, perform no operation for a criminal purpose, even if solicited, far less suggested, that whatsoever I shall see or hear of the lives of my patients, which is not fitting to be spoken, I will keep inviolably secret. These things do I swear. Let each of us bow the head in sign of acquiescence. And now, if I will be true to this my oath, may good repute ever be mine, the opposite if I shall prove myself forsworn. Dr. Goldman.
This is a very special class to me as dean. Now, it does include 40 or so people who spent more than 4 years and who experienced what we call the Columbia Classic curriculum. But most of the students graduating today were pioneers in the new curriculum, a curriculum that we didn't exactly dream up, but hopefully planned reasonably based on feedback from prior classes. That was brilliantly put together by Vice Dean Ron Drusen and the faculty, but that required a class that could roll with the punches, if you will, could tell us what was working and what wasn't, could trust us to fix what wasn't working and to make it better, could serve as arbiters for subsequent classes, knowing that we'd blame them for everything that we didn't fix in the future. This class showed remarkable durability, versatility, and teamwork in a curriculum that requires teamwork and team-based learning. We believe that you represent the very best of American medicine. You showed it during your time here, whether it was 4 years or 5 years or more years. We know you're destined for spectacular careers in the future, whether as clinicians, as researchers, or wherever your career may take you. We couldn't be more proud, and we join with your family and friends in congratulating you all collectively. After Chaplain Davis makes her remarks, we'll walk out, the graduates will follow us, and we'll congregate over there somewhere, where there'll be food and refreshments, and where family members with cameras can take pictures to their heart's content. Once again, congratulations. Chaplain Davis.
We give thanks for each of you. Go with courage, care for us all. Godspeed.